The AFC playoff picture is getting more interesting by the week, and we had a lot of movement in week 13. As we head to week 14, it's time to break it all down. But before we do, you are going to like this video, and you're going to subscribe to this channel. You can do it right now, and you're going to click below. Because frankly, I'm about to talk for 8 minutes. And damn it, I'd appreciate a little support. All right, let's get into it. So, the AFC came into the week. Chiefs were the number 1 seed. The Bills were a wild card team. And the Ravens trying to hold off the Bengals. Some of those things happened. Some things changed. The Ravens did hold off the Bengals with a win, but we're going to get to the Ravens here in a second because a lot changed other than just the fact that they were somehow able to beat out the Broncos 10-9 in a game that set football back about 170 years. We're going to get there. The Bengals, huge win over the Chiefs, 27-24. They win for the third straight time over Patrick Mahomes and company, each time by a field goal. The Bengals, with another comeback in the second half, they get the job done. They go to 8-4, as does Baltimore, as I mentioned earlier with that win. Buffalo, they went to 9-3 on Thursday. They beat the Pats, and they jump into the number 1 seed. Why? Well, that Chiefs loss I mentioned, that dropped the Chiefs to 9-3. They're both 9-3, the only 2 teams in the conference with 9 wins, but the Chiefs lost to the Bills back in Week 5 at Arrowhead Stadium. And Miami lost to Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers in a pretty ugly game where Tua threw a couple of picks. They fall to 8-4. So the Dolphins went from the 2nd seed to the 6th seed. The Bills went all the way to the 1 seed, and the Chiefs dropped down just a spot to the 2 seed. So let's break it down a little bit further. So right now, listen, we're not going to go any further than the Chargers, who are sitting in the 9th spot in the conference, okay? The Houston Texans are officially eliminated. Denver's 3-9 and terrible. Jacksonville and Indianapolis, 4 wins. They're not going anywhere. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, the Raiders, all at 5 wins. Okay, those teams would have to pretty much run the table to get in the playoffs. I don't think any of them are doing it. Although the Raiders, give them credit, on a roll right now, a little frisky after beating the Chargers. In fact, let's start with the Chargers. So the Chargers, had they have won on Sunday, okay, they actually would be in a playoff spot right now via conference record. But they're the Chargers. So they didn't win on Sunday. They lost 27-20 to the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. They fall to 6-6, and they're actually behind the Patriots, who sit 8th in the conference, 1 spot out of a playoff berth, because the Patriots have a better record in the conference. All right. That takes care of the in the hunt portion of this, okay? Chargers have a schedule. It's pretty interesting. They play the Dolphins next weekend on Sunday Night Football at SoFi Stadium. And I got to tell you, if the Chargers lose that game, they might as well pack it up. They still have to play the Titans. They do have easy games on the back end of this. Their last 3 games are the Colts, the Rams, and the Broncos. But if you're willing to bet that the Chargers are going to win all 3 of those games, the way the Chargers are, good luck to you. Good luck with your money. So let's get into the 7 teams that are actually in the picture right now. So Buffalo is the number 1 seed, 9-3, tied with the Chiefs, but again, they win on the head-to-head tiebreaker. What's interesting here is Buffalo's a very hard schedule ahead, okay? They play the Jets this upcoming week, and then they have the Dolphins coming into town on the last game of a 3-game road trip from Miami. And then, after that, a game on Christmas Eve in Chicago. They should win that game. And then at Cincinnati, Week 17, Monday Night Football, an enormous game for the playoff picture. Okay? And then they wrap up with the Pats at home. You would think they would win. Pats might be fighting for a playoff spot. Who knows? But the Bills should win the game. The Chiefs have the easiest schedule of any of these teams remaining. They have nobody left who they should lose to. They play Denver twice. They play the Raiders on the road. They play the Texans on the road. And they play Seattle at home. Seattle, of course, a playoff team at the moment. The Raiders are hot right now, but that is a Week 18 game. The Raiders probably aren't in it at that juncture. So Kansas City actually has a pretty good case of being able to run the table and getting 14-3. So Buffalo, if that happens, also has to run the table to get the number 1 seed. Do the Chiefs run the table? Hard to say. I mean, listen, you're asking a team to win 5 straight games. Now, the Chiefs just had a 5-game win streak broken, so certainly all things are possible, but it's not easy. If you check out 538, where they have a million different ways you can interact with the schedule, right now, the Chiefs have been given a 38% chance to get a first-round bye. Buffalo's at 46%. So pretty close. If the Chiefs were to win out if they were to win all 5 of their games, and obviously I'm not going through all the other results right now, the Chiefs have a 78% chance that first round bye. So if Chiefs went out, they'd be in pretty good shape. Although, of course, Buffalo could theoretically win all their games, but the Bills have the much harder schedule. Those are the 2 teams that are really fighting for the first round bye. I mean, the next highest percentage in the AFC is Cincinnati at 9%, Baltimore with 2%, Miami at 5%. Like, realistically, it's going to be Buffalo or Kansas City. You would think those are going to be the top 2 teams in the standings. The Bengals and the Ravens, we're going to get to them right now. So they're both 8-4. The Ravens won their first matchup of the season. It was on Sunday Night Football at Baltimore, and on a last-second field goal by Justin Tucker, and that's why they have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati. Those 2 teams will play at Paycor Stadium in Southern Ohio the last week of the season, Week 18. So the Bengals have a shot. Now, this is the complicated part of this whole thing. The Bengals are very healthy. They just got Jamar Chase back. He looked 100%. We'll see if Joe Mixon's back this week after missing a few games of concussion. The Ravens have lost Lamar Jackson to a knee injury for what is being termed by John Harbaugh as days or weeks. Okay? Now, here's the good news if you're a Baltimore fan. Schedule's a joke. Here's the bad news if you're a Baltimore fan. You're barely surviving that schedule with Lamar, and now you may not have him for some games. Okay? The Ravens have Pittsburgh coming up a few times. Their next 4 games in any order here. Pittsburgh twice, Atlanta, and Cleveland. You should be able to win some of those games with Tyler Huntley if you have to. Okay? But they barely beat Denver at home. They barely beat Carolina at home with Lamar Jackson, and they lost to Jacksonville. We shall see what happens with Baltimore, but that injury to Lamar Jackson obviously looming very, very large. Cincinnati's schedule is brutal. Now, they just did handle business these last 2 weeks. Tennessee and Kansas City, 2 division winners, handled them both. Found the way to win both games. 1-score games, Bengals got it done. They still have to play it at Tampa. They do play Cleveland at home, although with Deshaun Watson, that's always been a tough matchup for them. But that is a game you think they ought to win. They also play the Bills, as I mentioned earlier. They play the Ravens, and they play at New England. The Bengals are probably not going to run the table here. But can the Bengals go 4-1? Can they find a way to do that? If they do, they probably win the division, especially if that loss does not come to Baltimore. So Cincinnati finding itself all of a sudden in a good position, coming through in these harder games. Now, the Titans sit in the 4 seed. They got blown out by Philadelphia. They are 7-5. They're going to win the AFC South. I think that is the one team you can kind of pencil into its seeding. I do not see the Titans overtaking anybody above. Look, the Bills and the Chiefs they lost to. They're 2 games back of both. They're not catching them. And the Titans, by the way, still have a very tough schedule. They still have to play the Cowboys. They have some games ahead. The Chargers I mentioned earlier. Now, they do get Jacksonville twice and they get Houston. But still a couple of tough games. They're not going to catch Buffalo or Kansas City. They lost to Cincinnati, so if Cincinnati wins that division, probably not going to catch them either. Now, Baltimore, they didn't play. They're head-to-head, even up in the conference record, so maybe there. But I doubt it. I think, because if Baltimore stumbles, Cincinnati's probably going to win the division. And so, I think you could probably lock in Tennessee. Where it gets interesting, and we already talked about Cincinnati, so I'll skip over them for the wild card part since we've discussed them. Miami. Miami is 8-4. They now play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. After that game, they play Buffalo. They've already beaten Buffalo. If the Dolphins can win on Sunday against the Chargers, even if the Bills beat the Jets in Western New York on Sunday afternoon, the Dolphins hold their own destiny in their hands for the division. Now, they don't for the AFC's top seed. They need the Chiefs to lose a game. Okay, but they hold the destiny of the AFC East right now. If they beat the Chargers and go to Buffalo and they win that game, they will hold the tiebreaker because they'll be tied and they'll sweep the season series. Now, after they play the Bills, very, very possible they sweep the rest of the season schedule. Packers at home on Christmas, at Foxborough, home to the Jets. Dolphins are going to be favored in all those games. So it'd be very, very interesting to see how it all shakes. Now, the flip side of that is the Dolphins really need to take care of business against the Chargers. Because should they lose, and then they go to Buffalo and lose, now you're 8-6, okay? the Jets have already beaten you once, and the Jets have a schedule here that they should be able to win a couple games going forward. They got Jacksonville on the week of Christmas Eve. They've got Detroit here coming up. Jets are going to win some games. And if you lose to the Chargers, okay, you're only a game up on them. And while you're up there playing Buffalo, the Chargers have the Titans at home. And then, as I mentioned, the Colts, the Rams, and the Broncos. You then lose that tiebreaker. Big, big game. Miami, if they lose to the Chargers, they might miss the playoffs. If they beat the Chargers, you feel very good about not only their position about making the playoffs, which they will do, but you start looking at them going, division? Maybe? Maybe you win that division? So all of this stuff plays into a wild playoff picture. And, of course, as I mentioned, the Jets in the 7th seed, they go to Buffalo next week. Look, they've got to beat the Lions and Jags at home to get to 9 wins, and then they've got to win one road game. They've got Buffalo, they've got Miami, and they've got Seattle. Win one of them. Win one of them. Get to 10, you're probably in. That is the AFC playoff picture heading into Week 14. If you haven't already liked the video and you've gotten to this point, give me the damn like, okay? And subscribe to the channel. Because, my God, I've been talking for 10 minutes breaking this down. I've done the best I can. Give me a click. All right. Thank you for watching. AFC playoff picture, Week 14, wild stuff.